the number of people who have illegally crossed into Canada from the United States in January and February of 2018 is over 3,000 people. That's a lot, especially given that we haven't even seen the warm weather yet come in many parts of the country. You know, I saw these numbers and I'm really concerned for a few reasons. First of all, it's very clear that the Trudeau government has done absolutely nothing and is doing absolutely nothing to stop this flow. And let's talk about why this is not a particularly good exercise. First of all, it's completely unsafe for people who are making this journey. Anybody who is trying to cross into Canada illegally in the middle of winter is engaging in an unsafe activity. Second of all, it's completely unfair. It's completely unfair. There are many people who are trying to enter into Canada through legal means that are on lengthy wait lists. These include people that are in horrendous conditions around the world that are fleeing dictatorships and persecution because of their sexuality or their gender. And they don't have the option of being welcomed into Canada after illegally crossing into the country. It's completely unfair. You know, to any new Canadian who has gone through the process of coming to this country through legal means, I'm sure they're sitting there going, why is this happening? I did it the right way. How come this is being allowed? The third reason is that a majority of these people are crossing into Canada illegally right now anyways in Quebec. And what's interesting is the Quebec government actually just sent the bill. They actually sent a bill to the federal government and said, you know, there's tens of millions of dollars that this particular problem is having an impact on our budget. And how does it impact a provincial budget? Well, if you illegally enter the country from the United States and claim asylum, then you are entitled to healthcare, expedited work permits, affordable housing, and access into Canada's generous social assistance programs. And Quebec is saying, well, a majority of that is shouldered by provincial governments, so you should pay Justin Trudeau, given that you've done nothing to stop this problem. And of course, I asked the immigration minister about this a few months ago, and there was no answer about that. Surprise, surprise, even though Justin Trudeau is spending billions and billions and billions of money that we don't have, of dollars of money that we don't have on things that don't really do anything for the country, but it's certainly not dealing with this. So very briefly, for those of you who don't know what's happening, I'll explain it, and then I'm going to explain what the government needs to do immediately in order to solve this problem. First of all, Canada and the United States have an agreement. It's called the Safe Third Country Agreement. And what it is it's an agreement that says that if you enter into one of our countries and you make an asylum claim, so if you come into Canada or the United States and you claim asylum, that you can't cross into the other country and make an asylum claim as well. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's essentially what the agreement is. And that's to prevent asylum claim shopping, and it is also to ensure that we recognize the fact that both of our countries have very robust, very similar asylum claim systems, given that we're two of the most generous immigration systems in the world with very strong democracies. So it's to make sure that we're not, our countries have said we don't want to backlog the system in this way, given that we have a huge land border that's undefended. So this agreement works well, except it has a loophole. So it talks about legal points of entry, that you can't claim asylum. It goes into great detail about all the different legal points of entry, but it doesn't talk about illegal points of entry. So because the agreement is silent on that, you can actually walk across the border in an illegal entry, an illegal point of entry, and claim asylum, even if you've claimed asylum in one of the other countries already. And this was a huge problem last year. We know that there were tens of thousands of people who entered into the country through this means, and you've heard my videos on this. What has this resulted in? The board that reviews asylum claims, it's called the Immigration Refugee Board. It went from processing applications in a relatively timely fashion to, there was an internal report last year that said that it would take over 11 years to process someone's asylum claim. Recent reports have said that the IRB have just basically given up trying to do it within a 2-year legislative mandate. And what does this mean? This means that while somebody's asylum claim is pending, whether or not they have a valid claim or not, they're still entitled, just by making that claim, to access our social assistance programs. And to me, that's not right. What we should be doing is processing these claims really, really quickly, and then making sure that people who aren't here, who don't have valid claims, are removed from the country. That seems reasonable to me. Now, on top of these numbers that I gave you today, this 3,000 people in the first 2 months of the year, we've seen really explosive reports showing that the Canadian government is not removing people that have deportation orders. So these are not people who have come to the country legally or have legal means to be here, even asylum claims. These are people who have no basis to be in the country. And in some cases, this was a Global News report, people have actually been lost. And these are people that, some of them have serious criminal backgrounds. So we aren't processing asylum claims quickly. People are sitting for years, potentially, not having their asylum claim processed. We aren't removing people quickly enough who have been found to they shouldn't be in the country. They don't have legal means to be here. And worse off, the Trudeau government is doing nothing to stop the demand on the system, which is largely in part by people illegally crossing the border into Canada from the United States. So let me be perfectly clear here. I think anyone would be hard-pressed to make an argument that people are fleeing persecution from the United States of America. In fact, many people around the world try to get to the United States of America. So it's just this bizarre argument. So what does the Trudeau government need to do? You have heard me say this here how many times? The Trudeau government needs to close the loophole in the Safe Third Country Agreement. They haven't even broached this issue yet with the Americans. And I have no idea why. But this is becoming a problem for them because Canada accepts immigration when it is planned and orderly. This is neither of those things. It is illegal and unsafe. And that's the reality of the system. So what ends up happening is that people lose faith in the immigration system ability to process things properly and say, we don't want this. And the other thing is, it's completely unfair. You have watched me advocate for Yazidi genocide victims, some of the most persecuted, marginalized, victimized people in the world who have survived so much, who can't go home. People like that, people who have survived genocide and are persecuted by the ethnic and religious majority of their in their region to the point where it's unsafe for them to be there. That's where we should be focusing our humanitarian assistance. And, it's more than just that. It's also people that are trying to come into the country legally who wait for years to have their claims processed. I had the minister in front of our committee and his department officials last year, and they were talking about with great pride how they had diverted over 80 staff to this processing center in Montreal that's been set up to deal with the illegal border crossing situation. That's not right. And I think many people, again, across the political spectrum are sort of waking up and saying, this doesn't work. And this is actually an issue that's not just unique to Canada. It's especially pertinent in the European Union right now. The whole issue of how asylum claims function and how people should be entering into the system. This is, I think, a top public policy issue in Canada that Trudeau refuses to address. But you've seen me hold the minister to account, will continue to do so. But I just wanted to let you know that, again, the first 2 months of this year, January and February, and for those of you who might be watching from warmer parts of the world, it's not the best time of year to be outdoors in Canada. Those 2 months, we had over 3,000 people cross the border illegally. And I just am really worried about what's going to happen as the warm weather warms up. It is not acceptable to say that the response is to set up tent cities and trailers, like a refugee camp along the US-Canada border. That is completely unacceptable. That is completely ridiculous. It's beyond the pale, and it's something that the Canadian electorate needs to hold Justin Trudeau to account for. He has perverted our open immigration system. It's actually disgusting, and it makes a mockery of anyone who's trying to come to this country legally. we're watching these numbers. We've made some progress in, I think, waking the public up to these issues in Canada and waking the public up to what Justin Trudeau needs to do to fix it. This needs to continue to be an issue as we head into the federal election in 2019, because frankly, I think that's the only way that Trudeau is going to look at this as something that he needs to fix. And frankly, I'm not sure he can. I think actually that we're going to need a change in government to deal with this. Well, I know that. Working hard for you. Have a great day.